Hiya, friendos. Welcome back to another episode of Washing Dishes. So, we have already discussed how much I like taking classic kind of comfort food dishes and turning them into something kind of fancy. So today, we're going to give that treatment to a Midwestern classic I'm just going to kind of goof off with because I got the ingredients, but I'm not going to use a recipe. I will put how much of everything I use down in the description, so you don't need to write anything down as I go. You will have a recipe. Will not. But this is one of those dishes that is just kind of what we in the professional food industry call a fridge dump. It's kind of just what you've got around thrown into a casserole. So let's go ahead and get going with some veg prep and some other kind of side projects that go along with the fancy version. And then we'll put it all together, we'll cook them together, and then we will taste them against each other. We'll see, we'll judge the merits of both. This is a dish I've had before. A dear friend of mine used to make it at camping events. So this should be a lot of fun. Anyway, hang out, check it out, and voiceover will tell you about what the full plan is as we go.
Oh, hey, that's me. So I'm going to group this by task rather than timeline. So just know that a bunch of this stuff got done at the same time in the background. And it doesn't matter. You can do it in order. You can do it all together. But I did it all together, and I'm grouping it by task. So the first thing we're going to do is render out some bacon because we want some bacon fat and we want some crispy bacon. We've done this a bunch of times before. We're going to slice it thin. We're going to start it in a cold pan. We're going to bring it up, we're going to strain it, and we're going to scatter it on some paper towels. And with that taken care of, we're going to move on to some homemade cream of mushroom soup. And for that soup, we're going to pop the stems out of some mushrooms so that we can use them to make a mushroom stock to form the base of soup and deglaze later. Then we're just going to chop them into some reasonably big pieces, since they're going to cook down a lot into smaller pieces. Once we've got them chopped up, we're just going to go ahead and pop in a bowl, and then we'll get them onto the stove and going. So into the pan that we cooked our bacon in is going to go our mushrooms, and we're going to let these go on high heat, basically unsalted but with some pepper, until they start to develop a really nice browning. A lot of the moisture will cook off, then we'll salt them, and then we'll add the rest of our mushroom soupy ingredients. And by the rest of those mushroom soup ingredients, I mean a quick deglaze with our mushroom stock, some flour to create a bit of a roux for our cream, and then I'm using oat milk because lactose, but you could use heavy cream or half and half or whatever. But yeah, so that's basically some really, 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 really simple, quick, easy, homemade cream of mushroom soup. We're just using this because the tradition uses a cream of mushroom or chicken soup. For the onions, we're just going to do a mixture of diced red onion, which we're going to saute until it's just kind of starting to brown and soften, and then we're going to do the same with some sliced white onions, again, just till they're brown, starting to soften. All of this is going to end up mixed together in a bowl and then in a casserole dish. So as long as things are mostly cooked so that they don't release a ton of moisture and all of a reasonable size to fit in a spoon or fork, the exact, everything doesn't have to be perfectly identical in size, even for the fancy stuff, because this is all kind of going in a casserole dish, like I said. The other thing we're going to do to fancify our fancy version is to do some cold fried shallots, which we're going to slice thin on a mandolin, start in cold olive oil, bring up to a simmer, and then a fry, and just as they're starting to brown, we will bust a very foolish mission to do a single shot of pulling them off the stove and onto the table to strain, and, to be honest, it mostly worked. It's not the most elegant shot I've ever done, but yeah, once they're strained off, we're going to go ahead and scatter them on some paper towels to drain off and get the last little bit of crispiness on them, and let's chop some potatoes real quick. And the potatoes are just going to be diced to add some little, extra texture to our fancy version. Variety is, generally considered to be fancy, and I wanted something other than just the usual shredded stuff. Prep for the classic version is obviously much less complicated. We're going to dice and saute some onions. Again, medium dice and sauteed just until they're starting to brown and soften. And then once that's done, pretty much all we got to do is dice up some ham and then put it all together.
All right, let's build. So we're going to start with some hash browns. I'm going to use 2/3 of this bag and then use the other third in the fancy version.
To those hash browns, I'm going to add our ham, 1 can of condensed cream of chicken soup. You could use cream of mushroom soup or cream of celery soup or whatever sounds tasty. I'm also, of course, going to get our onions in there. This wouldn't be a cheesy potato dish without a whole bunch of cheddar cheese. Well, a whole bunch of some kind of cheese. And for the classic version, I'm using pre-shredded cheddar cheese because that seemed like the right cheese to use. I'm also going to go ahead and add a not quite 1 container of sour cream. If you were doing a 9x13, you would want a whole container. I think in this case, I used just about 12 ounces. Or sorry, just about 10 of the 12 ounces. And that all gets mixed up with your hands if you had gloves. Or in my case, I didn't have gloves, so I just used a big wooden spoon or spatula, whatever you want to call it, to get that all mixed up and everything nice and evenly distributed. And I'm going to go ahead and put this in a 6x10 baking dish. Just plop it in there, spread it out, get it nice and even. And then we're going to go ahead and cover it with a little bit more cheese and a whole bunch of good old corn flakes. Because you got to have that crunch. You need that textural note. Otherwise, it just won't work. It'll just be a big pile of mush. The corn flakes are important. And then that just gets covered with aluminum foil, and it's ready to go in the oven. It's going to sit for a sec while we build the other one, because they're going to bake at the same time. The build for our fancy version is, of course, a bit more complicated. It starts with the same hash browns, but then we're going to add our diced potatoes, our crispy, already cooked bacon that will lose some of its crispness, but that's not a big deal. We're going with about 8 ounces of shredded aged cheddar cheese. And then our homemade cream of mushroom soup, which, as you can see, is not as creamy as the condensed stuff, but we're going to make up for that in other ways. These are our onions going in, our red onions. And then, of course, immediately following that will be our white onions, which, again, are just a different shape to add a variety of texture and that kind of stuff. For our creamy component, we're going to go ahead and add a 10-ounce container of yogurt. Then later, I'm going to realize that's not creamy enough and go back and add the other couple ounces of sour cream that we used in the original version. And like the other version, this is all going to get mixed up real good with a spatula until everything is evenly distributed and looking all, I was going to say homogeneous, but heterogeneity is the name of the game here. We just want everything to be kind of evenly spread out and distributed so that when we put it into our casserole, it's not like big pockets of potato and big pockets of onion and big pockets of mushroom, because that just wouldn't work out in the final dish. It would be weird and inconsistent. Once it's mixed, this one, like the classic version, is getting spread out into a baking dish and leveled off, and then getting covered with some different options of toppings. Now, for the crispy element for this version, we're using those fried shallots. So we're going to go with more of our aged shredded cheddar, or I guess I should say shredded aged cheddar. And then we're going to go ahead and scatter our fried shallots over the top to be our little kind of crispy, crunchy layer. And we're just kind of layering cheese, shallots until we kind of just build it up and we'll have a nice crust. And then, of course, that one also gets covered in foil, just like the other. And then these are both ready to go into the oven. We're going to put them into the oven on the middle rack, covered for somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour. You're going to want to uncover them for the last 15 minutes. So while they're in the oven, you're going to want to kind of like rotate them and check them every now and again, just kind of peek under the foil. Until they look good, then you'll uncover them and let them go for another few minutes just to kind of crisp up the tops again, and then they're ready to come out.
1 hour later.
And once they're out of the oven, give them a few minutes to cool off before you eat them, because otherwise this molten, bubbling deliciousness will absolutely destroy the roof of your mouth and your tongue. Have some patience, I urge you.
All right, they're out of the oven. We let them cool on the table for like 20 minutes so that they wouldn't burn our mouths. Who needs a plate? These work. I'm going to go ahead and dive into the classic one first. Nice. Still very hot. It's tasty. It's rich. It's creamy, potatoey, cheesy. The cornflakes add a nice crunch, of course. It's very, kind of classic down-home casserole meal. It's tasty. I mean, I'm going back for a second bite. Yeah. I have nothing bad to say about this version. Let's try the fancied up version. Also very hot. It's richer, it's creamier, it's more decadent. So the real question, this is better. It's got more complexity, it's got more flavors going on. And I kind of knew that was going to happen. Because I spent an hour and a half making this and 20 minutes making this, not counting cooking time. So this was going to be better. I put more effort into it, obviously. So the question then becomes, was that effort worth it? I hate to be the it's mid guy here, but I really like this. I don't mind the hour and a half that I put into making it, aside from cooking it. But if you want to make this one, I recommend it. It's great. If you've got the time, you have the inclination, make the big fancy one. But if you just want to make a casserole for a potluck or something, you can't go wrong. You're not going to go wrong with these classics. It's tasty. It's crunchy. It's crispity. You could probably throw cornflakes on this one and get more crunch to it. But, Anyway, I'm going to go enjoy these for dinner. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your time zone. If you enjoy this, you'll probably enjoy these. You'll probably enjoy catching me on Twitch or on socials down in the description. Again, thank you all for watching, and I will see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.